Hello and welcome to our next video series for the RAS solution. It is 40 degrees today. It's New Year's Day here in Perth, Australia. That's almost 110 degrees for the Americans. So I think I'll stay inside today to try to keep cool and make some videos while my clients are off on holiday. So I do hope your 2025 is off to a great start already. I am wearing my Metallica t-shirt today. They canceled their previous Australian tour 5 years ago, but they're finally coming back to Perth in 2025. So look for me in the crowd. I'll be the one screaming like it's 1985. So I'm counting on a good year. Now, about 5 or 6 years ago, I turned on my laptop camera while I set up a very basic HEC RAS project. At the time, I had no recording equipment, no experience, not a clue about YouTube or anything like that. In the meantime, I've made a whole bunch of other videos for this channel and for the Australian Water School and for some other outlets. And then, thanks to COVID, I took the opportunity to put together a whole new home office with some broadcasting and recording equipment so I could try to keep up with some online training and webinars. But that very first set of low-budget videos where I just walked through a basic model setup from scratch on this fossil of an old laptop, unfortunately those still get the most views out of any channel that I'm working with, even though a lot of the details covered in these original 8 videos aren't actually relevant anymore, thanks to some new features and program updates that have come out in the meantime. So I need to give the Google and YouTube algorithms something new to work with. That way they'll stop pointing people to this really outdated stuff. And as we dive into the year 2025 today, I thought the recent double release of HEC RAS 6.6 and the new HEC RAS 2025 might give me a good incentive to do another walkthrough. So it does sound like it'll be a few years before all of the features that are currently available in version 6.6 get built into 2025. So I'll plan to do the walkthrough in the legacy version, which they're already calling version 6.6, even though we can't completely migrate to 2025 just yet. So I do want to cover both of those installations in a minute, but just to give an overview of what's available now and what's still coming up in the future, I thought we'd start with these 2 emails that happen to have come out in the last hour of the last day, of the last week, of the last month, of the last federal US fiscal year. So it was already the next day here in Australia, but I'm thinking the whole HEC team must have officially met their KPIs with the timing of these 2 releases. Now, there are a lot of links in these emails, which I will include in the YouTube description below. So this first link is the download page. If you're new to HEC RAS and you want to follow along from scratch, go ahead and click here to grab the setup package. I'd also recommend grabbing the example files too. We'll get them from the downloads folder later on as soon as we've stepped through the rest of these links. There is another link for HEC RAS 2025 here, but that's the same link that's covered in the course second email. We'll hit that one later on too. So if we go to that second link there, that's the release notes. It's actually just really a pointer to the next 2 links that you see here. This first one covering new features. There's a lot here, but what everybody is excited about at the moment is pipes. So there's a disclaimer that this is still a beta version, but you can see a bit of detail about how to set up your pipe geometry. This will walk you through the process of setting up a geometry, and this page will show not just that process, but the types of pits and pipes that you can enter as nodes and conduits now. These are the things we were not able to model in HEC RAS before. You would have had to use other software in the past to get an interconnected storm drain system, which you could then potentially combine, I guess, with your 1D or 2D model. Now, you can put these features right in your model now, as long as you are in the US. For us in the international community of freeloaders out there, we'll need to wait until the bug fix version is released so that we can work in SI units. So we'll get back to that in a minute. So there's a few other links here, and you can see in this one, there are some features that were resolved between version 6.5 and 6.6. Now, that includes updates to infiltration, which had some glitches in the previous version. Moving on to this next link here, this is an important one. This is the Confluence documentation page. It's not new, it's been around for a little while, but there are some new things on it. You may want to explore some of the new content here. All of the manuals are now online, have been for a while, but they're updated live when there's something to add. So I would definitely recommend just clicking on each of these links, browse through what's available. It includes not just written manuals, but you'll see free training course materials and video walkthroughs as well. and all the sample files that you'll need to do with tutorials. And those are the authors of the software themselves that will be your guides for those. So finally, this last link shows the known issues in the current version. There are lots of bug fixes, which have apparently already been completed, but we'll have to wait for version 6.7 or whatever's next to get them. Now, primarily, the one that I'm really anxiously waiting for is this one here, which is already resolved. And I'm hoping we can get the updated version soon so I can do a demo of bits and bytes in SI units. So this wait time, this concept of waiting, won't actually be a problem in the 2025 version. So I'll show you why in a second here. But let's close this up and then go to the second email from the core. And you'll notice then on this one, when we open up this download page, all the screenshots, it's got a whole different look and feel to it. And if you're wanting to install this yourself, go ahead and click on that link. It'll go to your downloads folder. And what we can then do is open it up in wherever we've downloaded it. I've got it here. I'll just unzip this one. And you can actually install this one without admin privileges, which some people otherwise have to get from their IT department. So it'll just unzip to whatever folder you've put it in. Be mindful, this is still an alpha version, but it is fun to explore. If you take the files that it downloads and then sort by type, look for the exe files. So those are the, not the extensions, but these applications themselves. If you double click on ras.exe, then it'll open up this brand new interface. And it initially will ask you for a default directory once you open that up. So you'll see, again, it's a totally different interface. So I'm just accepting the default directory that they've suggested, but a couple of cool new features that are going to be very helpful. If you report a bug, which you can do right here, live through this window, you report it right now. And then if that bug gets fixed and addressed, the update shows up the very next day sometimes. And if you look through this list here, and let's go to the next link and see as well, if you look at this link here, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of updates that have already been made just since it was released a few months ago. So the links here also include a live streamed webinar that was at 1 a.m. here in Australia a few months back. I thought it was definitely worth tuning into. If you give the recording a watch, yeah, I hope you do get a chance to. I'm guessing it'll answer most of the questions anyone might have about where things are heading. There is a dedicated HEC RAS 2025 YouTube channel that you'll want to subscribe to so that you'll get notified when new content is posted. The other link is to a quick start guide, which you can see here, includes information on how to set up all sorts of things like the projection. It's a little different than in the previous versions. And there's a few other things that have been added. A lot of information that you'll want to take the time to scroll through. We won't cover it in a lot of detail here today. But let's go back to this main page. Do take the time to browse through this one slowly on your own. The main thing I want to focus on today is a bit of a reality check in terms of the timeline. As you can see here, it's still going to be a few years before this version is actually viable for active projects. So look at this roadmap. We've got 2025. If you scroll down, we'll see 2026, 2027. I don't know if they're going to change the name with each release, but there are decades worth of program features to code into this new interface. So it is definitely a big job. One feature that you can absolutely use at the moment and use to pull back into your 6.6 models is the mesh generation tool. So you can see demos of that. So here's some screenshots of it, but you can actually see demos of that in some of the core's YouTube videos. So if you go back to the 2025 channel, there's one right there on how to import the mesh back into HEC RAS 6.6. So these are some exciting updates. Yeah, this all gives us a preview of where we're heading in the future. Now, I actually visited the HEC offices back in 2019. So here's a Google Earth view of their office. I'm thinking we'll do a quick pop quiz here. The HEC offices, they're located on the second floor of that building that you see there in that shop. So here's the pop quiz question. Are the HEC offices located above a cookie shop, a shavery, a kava bar, or a wine bar? Now, the answer, if you have a look at the map in Google, you can see that they're also across from a smoke shop, a sushi shop, Bizarro World and Ho Ho Market, and a lot of pizza and coffee. So there's lots of selection, but the answer is all of the above. So this is my selfie from outside the office. There's an unmarked entry there that goes up the stairs. There's that wine bar next door, and upstairs is where the magic happens. So when I was there, again, 5 years ago, I got to see this demo of the new interface. And as the years went by, I was beginning to wonder if we'd finally get to take it out for a test drive. And I guess that day is finally here now. So with all of these recent developments, I thought I'd try again with these videos here and make these 8 segments here obsolete and give you the material you'll need to follow along, go from scratch. We'll step through a complete model setup, just like I did way back when. And we'll do this though with the current version, which is 6.6. If any new features or fixes are added in 6.7 or beyond, I'll try to tackle those later on with some separate demos. So the one thing I'll do differently this time around is to keep a running tally of my wish list items for a 2025 version, or maybe add to the legacy versions in the meantime. So maybe we can crowdsource this thing a bit. And if we can involve you as the viewers of this video in the process, I'll set up some online polls, which I'll link to in the description below. And you can have a look at some of the suggested improvements. Upvote the ones that you would benefit from the most. You can correct me if I've missed something. Maybe there's an existing workaround I haven't discovered, or add your own suggestions for some upgrades that I might not have thought of yet. And if we happen to spot some bugs along the way, I'll point those out too. So I'm going to compile the results of these and pass the ranked list along to the developers, and we'll see if any wish list items can get incorporated. And so that I think will take us to tip number 1, which is to take any of the bug fixes that are already resolved. We had this SI unit fix for pits and pipes. It's been fixed. If we can just update the installation files with those bug fixes as soon as they're done, like it's being done for 2025, that would be awesome. So if you want to see a demo of what happens with pits and pipes in SI units in the meantime, you can see this Australian Water School webinar here, or just a preview here, and we go through the geometry setup for the pipe network. We just can't quite generate the results yet with the bug in there. So we'll leave that one for later. But in the meantime, let's get to our actual start to finish demo. If we're going to really take this back to the beginning and go from scratch, we'll need to go back to our download folder. And I'm going to move the example project's zip file to a folder that I can find easily. I've put mine here under D drive HEC RAS, and then I'm just going to unzip the example project. Now keep in mind, this is just the input files that are unzipping here. You'll need to run the plans to see the results because they're large files. 6.6 though, if we have a look at this, it's I think there are some new examples in here, but you can see all those folders here. And I think there's some new ones for 2025 as well that you'll want to grab from that one. So let's double click on the exe file. This one will install just like any other Windows software. You'll double click it, follow the prompts. You'll need admin privileges for this. There was a bug in that initial 6.6 release where it uninstalled previous versions. I think that's been fixed. Now I just go through and accept the terms. I just take the default directories and everything else. I do always create the desktop shortcut and then just go through the installation. As a quick tip though, if you want a project to appear exactly as it did when the project was created, you might want to keep some of the old versions running because the new versions will overwrite your HDF files when you open a project, even if you don't save that project. I do like to pin this to the taskbar, so I'll go ahead and click on that one as well. If you do need to run a previous version, all of the archived versions are available back on the same website that we went to download that one. You can see all the previous versions here. There's no problem keeping multiple versions running on the same computer, except, I might add, if you've made any custom edits to color ramps for legends and things like that. Be sure you export those before uninstalling a previous version, or you'll lose some of them. So if we go back to the installation, here's the new interface for version 6.6. What you'll notice is that all of the main menu items and buttons are exactly the same as they were in the previous version. There are some bug fixes and some new features, which we saw on the web page. You'll want to take advantage of some of those, but you won't necessarily see them in the main menus or buttons. So for now, it's going to be a very familiar looking interface if you're already experienced with previous versions of HEC RAS. So they did, I think there was a couple of things that were added. So the help menu is the same, tools, options, view, run, edit. It's all the same, except there's one exception under file. That was added for 6.5. It's the only menu item that's been changed in the last year or so. Relatively new feature called Compare Model Data. We'll give this one a try later on, once we've set up our model and made some changes to it. We can then compare the modified model to the original. So if you want a deeper dive into that, check out Full Momentum Vodcast episode number 28. Now, I probably wouldn't have even noticed that new menu item if it hadn't specifically been referenced in the release notes. A lot of times new things will pop up without much of a mention in the documentation at all. So I do recommend, whenever you see a new version, just scroll through absolutely everything, even if you think you know what it does, and see if there's anything you don't recognize. Sometimes I find something that I think is new, and when I end up looking into it, I realize they added it years ago in a previous version, and I just never bothered to look. So, for example, I think if you look over here, there's a 3D, the 3D viewer button that was added. That replaced a previous XYZ wireframe button, which went away a few versions back, which I still like to use sometimes. So I was bummed when it disappeared. But what I didn't realize until just now, as I was following my own advice here, that they still have it right here in the view menu. It's just the button that's been removed. So browse through everything, click on everything, right click on everything. Just make sure you haven't missed anything new that's been added. With all the menu items that they have in HEC RAS, I think we'd need days and days and maybe weeks worth of tutorials to get through all of the features. There's so much in HEC RAS. We're just going to cover the geometry, button number 3, the unsteady flow, button number 6, the unsteady plan, running man over the hill, that's button number 10, and then the RAS mapper, of course, which is button number 14 if we count from the left. So we'll simplify things and just focus on those 4 buttons. Now, I did put together a workshop guide manual for some previous courses. It's a PDF file that I usually customize and pass along to any course attendees. But since there's a whole new interface coming out with 2025, I'm going to just have to redo the entire thing anyway. So this one will be obsolete shortly. So I've gone ahead. Here's the PDF file. I've just posted it online for everyone for free. It's at hydroschool.org/workshops if anyone's interested in downloading it. It's got some suggestions for template folders when you start a new model. But before we do some of that ourselves, I thought I'd point out the schematic here, just to make sure the file structure of HEC RAS is understood. So just to outline what we'll do in this particular video series, we're going to create a new project, which you can see here. That's the PRJ file. We'll then go into RAS Mapper to set things up geospatially there. So that's the RAS map file. We'll then link that to a geometry. That's the G01 file. Link it also to a unsteady flow file, the U01 file. And then we'll put those together and link them up in a plan, which is going to be the P01 for starters. And then all the other files that we add will get sequentially numbered up from there. So you can download this PDF file if you want a written reference. So this schematic essentially just shows how a HEC RAS plan is simply a linkage between the dirt and the water, the dirt being the geometry in this case, and the water being the unsteady flow file. Again, here are the 4 buttons that we're going to cover in the interest of time. These are all on the left side of the menu. We're not going to touch much on the steady flow or 1D modeling on the right side of the menu here, but you can have a look at some of our previous tutorials on those topics if anyone's interested in that. So today I wanted to create a new model from scratch, and in that process of putting the model together, we'll see if there's anywhere that some potential updates might help improve our modeling experience. So with that rambling out of the way, let's get to work, and we'll pull back up to our main window here and go back to the blank screen. So let's first go to Options, Program Setup, where before even creating a new file, you may want to set a default project folder up. So I'll create one here, which I'll put on my D drive and call it Disneyland. So that's a spoiler for where we'll be for this demo. I'm also going to go ahead and go back to the options as well. I always do this after installing new software, a new version that's in US units. I'll go back under options, go to the unit systems, and set my default to SI units. So then from there, once we've set that, I'll go ahead and confirm that I'm in SI units. I go to File, New, and I'm going to just browse right to that default folder. That'll take me right back to where I'm going to be sitting. And I'm going under the Disneyland folder, and we'll go ahead and put in a project title and file name. Now the title can be longer if you want. It can have spaces, the file name can't. And then it's going to just confirm that that's what we want to do and that it's going to be in SI units. Now if I go into Windows Explorer, I can now see the PRJ file under the Disneyland folder. Now I'd recommend adding the other subfolders here before proceeding. So we've got a new empty project set up. But if I go back to my wish list, item number 2 is for HEC RAS to create its own folder structure, similar to the way HEC HMS does it when you start a project. So HEC RAS can automatically create folders for features and terrains along the way while you're building your model, but I'd like to have somewhere to put the files before I start a project. So I keep this template here on my hard drive, Control A, selects them all, Control C to copy them, and then I'll just go take those folders, those subfolders, and paste them back into the same directory. So this is what I use whenever I start a new project. I've described the contents of some of these. If you look here, there's 9 of them. I've described the contents of some of these in this first video, part 1 of 8 here. But the one that I'm using now has a couple of new folders that I didn't mention at the time, and those are included in that PDF file. It includes a file for a log, for example, which I think is crucial for any model with any degree of complexity to it. You got to keep track of where your plans are, which geometries are linked together, what your latest is, what your sensitivities are, things like that. So using a log file like this example here, you can document the model setup, make things consistent for a reviewer, and keep track of all the things that you might need to keep track of. Now, I also keep my own local methodologies and spreadsheets within some of the folders. So if I go back to the folder setup with all the subfolders that I've got, then under hydrology, I keep local hydrological methods. Under projections, I keep some of the local projections and then just leave the ones in there that I'm going to use. And the rest are just for any project specific aerials, terrain, shape files, report files, and so on. So they're all described in that PDF workshop guide if you want some more details. Keep in mind, these are only suggestions. I'd recommend that every company come up with their own folder structure and log file template that's best suited for your own work. It just helps for consistency across projects, especially if you're going to have multiple modelers or reviewers working on a project at your company. It just makes it easier to find everything, and having that standard log file can help make everything more efficient for both the modeler and for the reviewer. So if you're doing this for yourself, I'd recommend keeping a live, easy to find template folder that you can copy and paste every time you start a new project. So back to the wish list. Number 3, which should have been probably the very first one, is this PRJ extension. Can we just call it .ras or something that's not the same as my 50,000 projection files that I've got on my computer? They accompany every single shapefile that I've got. That PRJ extension makes it hard to search the directory for HEC RAS projects. Now, RAS recognizes the difference. If you're opening a project, it's only going to find RAS projects. So maybe we could add a search window here or something to find all your RAS projects. But as a workaround, in the meantime, one of the things that I recommend doing is to just search for .ras map. So if you look here, every project that I do, I put into RAS mapper, and so every project file has an accompanying RAS map file, just one, not 100 different PRJ files. So that's my little workaround for that unfortunate coincidence that it's the same file extension as projections. As a related suggestion, I think we're on number 4 now. If you have multiple HEC RAS projects in the same folder, which I really don't recommend, you'll see that the core never does this with their example files either. It would be great to show a column with the dates here so you could sort them and know which one is the most recent. I did forget to mention another item. I guess this would be number 5. So if we are creating a new project file, I think I mentioned that you can't have spaces in it. It'd be great if you could just add some spaces in the project file name itself, because sometimes you want to get a little more detail in there without the underscores. So maybe I'll lose track of the suggestion numbers, but I would also suggest allowing a longer list of recent projects. I think you get 8, and anything beyond that drops off the list. So I review a lot of models, and it'd be great to be able to get anything I've worked on over the last couple of weeks onto this list. So that's my suggestion number 6. I think I'll just call it there. We're ready now to dive into RAS Mapper next, and I'll go ahead and stop this video as part 1. We'll cover background, resources and project setup in this video. And then in the remaining parts, part 2 will cover RAS mapper setup. Part 3 will be the geometry. Part 4, the flow. Part 5 is the plan. And part 6 will be RAS mappers results. Now we're going to step through the development of a RAS model one time for this series. In reality, this is a loop. It's an iterative process. So once you have a look at your preliminary results, you may need to go back and adjust the grid, update the time step, add some sensitivities, check your results, go back through the errors, go back and make changes, circle back through these steps over and over again. That's hydraulic modeling 101, regardless of which model you use. Now, for this series, we'll just do a basic model all the way through once. And then from there, I'll add more detailed topics using that same model that we've set up here. Now, the goal is to go start to finish from scratch with a full walkthrough for those brand new to HEC RAS. For those who are already experienced with HEC RAS, I still want your suggestions as well so that we can all learn from each other and help to improve the software together. So even if the suggested improvements don't get added to the official version of the software, there are a lot of power users out there doing some really awesome new things with scripts and AI interfaces, people who are able to code up some custom apps outside the software, which we can then all potentially benefit from. So I would definitely recommend connecting with other HEC RAS users. This community, there's a community of literally hundreds of thousands of HEC RAS modelers out there. So I hope you all get a chance to actively engage with that community to help aid that process. As we close out this video, I'll pass along some other resources in addition to the official links that we've stepped through from the core. So we have the RAS solution here, hosted by Klein Schmidt. We've got a blog. Got some book links for Chris Goodell's books. There's a forum, some videos. If you look at the forum posts, there are 8,000, I believe, posts. Yeah, 8,000 posts here that we can see that you can learn from. We also have the Australian Water School's HEC RAS playlist here that you may be interested in. And there are some really cool things in there that we've had some blog posts on and some videos on with the RAS Commander and some AI applications here. That's by Bill Katzenmeier. We've also got some new interfaces here, some chat GPT interfaces that Blake Markson at WMS has created. So give those a play. Try it. Try typing in, see how it does if you ask it a question. There are some LinkedIn user groups as well that are pretty active. So put your questions in there and interact with people there. There is a Facebook group as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot of resources for you to have a look at here. So with that, I wish you all the best for 2025. Wishing you all peace and good health this year, because nothing else matters. So with that, signing off for part 1. We'll see you in part 2.